Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker. In this podcast, we love to say that while a smart person learns from their mistakes, a genius learns from the mistakes of others. So in that vein, we bring together experts from all over the place. They have expertise in all different areas, things that you might not have thought of before, or maybe in areas that you didn't know you didn't know. So in today's episode, we have Chuck Ridgeway, who is the automation technology manager for a company called Horner APG. And this is going to be something that's very technical and very specific for many group of people, but there's a lot of learning that can be applied here in our conversation to other areas of business. So I really hope that you listen in and see what you can gain from this amazing episode. So Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So I want to set the stage by talking how you have worked at Horner for 30 years?
It's between 30 and 35. I started in 1990. So whatever that math works out to be, I guess that would be 33 years.
I can't even believe that 1990 was 33 years ago. That does not track.
Yeah, I know.
But you've been in the company for a very long time. So I really want to get into that because I think it's something that, was an expectation for a long time, that you were meant to join a company and stay there, and they took care of you, you took care of them, and it was this great relationship. And we don't see that so much anymore. So I really want to dive into that. But before we go into that piece of it, can you give us a little background on what it is that Horner does and what you do for them? Because there's the Horner Automation, there's the Horner Lighting, and then there's the Horner Solutions. And so for the lay person who's not in the industry, they might not understand the difference. So it'd be great to start to set the stage with that foundational information.
Sure. So I technically work for Horner Automation, which is part of Horner APG, which is a division of Horner Electric. So basically, Horner Electric was founded in the 1940s by the Horner family, George and Mary Horner, and then their sons took over the business in the last, decade or two. And they continue to run it today. So effectively what we do on the automation side or the APG side of the business is we deal in three different areas. We deal in factory automation, where we manufacture general purpose products that companies use to build machines, to automate factories, to automate buildings. They're used in mobile applications and agriculture, all over the place. Any kind of automation, our products are used there. And then we also deal with industrial lighting. So Horner Lighting produces industrial lighting products, and we specialize or are most successful in inspection lighting type systems, which are used like in automotive plants to inspect the paint as a car body, comes out of the paint shop to make sure everything looks good without defects. And then we also have a solutions group. And what we do in the solutions group is we try and provide automation products, but ones that are a little bit more ready to plug in and go. Our general purpose automation products need a lot of setup and programming and installation. Our systems or solutions type automation products are a little bit more just, connect them up and start using them. So that's kind of what we do on the solution side.
That is a great overview. And it's something that unless you're in manufacturing, you might not realize that there's these pieces. I know that when I was in engineering, there was always an automation group. There was at least one automation engineer, and they would work with the control room very closely and making sure that all of the pieces talk to one another. And I can always remember going into the control room of the cement plant where I started my career and just seeing the sea of screens. I mean, it was almost like I think of the Apollo 13, the Houston,
right.
We have a problem, right? All the screens where all the things are moving around and how they keep
Sure.
track of all of that. And so that's part of what your company is, or what Horner is providing to your customers.
Yeah, the systems that people are going to be monitoring from their control rooms would include the systems that our products are running in a plant, for sure.
So let's go back to the start of your career.
Sure.
What made you, I can't imagine that you were like, I want to be in automation, because that probably wasn't really a main thing. So kind of what was your degree in, and how did you get into this place, and what was that career trajectory for you?
Sure. So I went to college as an electrical engineer. So that was my degree. And I went to a really unique university. So it's called Kettering University now. It wasn't called that back then. But to get into Kettering, you not only had to, be accepted based on your scholastic achievements, but you also had to get a job. You actually had to have a corporate sponsor where you could effectively do a semester at school, a semester at work, a semester at school, a semester at work, and you alternated that for 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, you had a
system.
Yeah, it's a great system. You had a 4-year degree plus 2.5 years of work experience. So my corporate sponsor was a General Motors plant in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So it was a stamping plant. We did car bodies and things. And I got exposed to just about every area of the plant, from engineering to even HR and everywhere in between. So I got a lot of experience in a plant. And one thing I discovered was I enjoyed working in a plant, but I didn't want to work in the same plant, every day, every week, every year. So I wanted to come into a plant, work in that environment, and then maybe go to a different plant and check that out. So when I got out of school and my plant wasn't hiring, I had an opportunity to be a maintenance supervisor at another automotive plant. I turned that down and I went to work for an automation company. Now, at this stage, I had just a little bit of experience with automation, really not a lot. So my job at that automation company was effectively visiting plants in the Detroit area and working on automation products. That's pretty much what I did. So that was like diving into the deep end. And then I did that for a couple years. And then I needed to move to get married, to move to Indianapolis. And I found another automation company, happened to be Horner. And I've been there ever since.
So, I mean, you were fairly young. Yes, you had some work experience, which I wish all colleges could be set up that way, because, oh my gosh, you're sitting in a classroom for years and years. Yes, you might have labs or stuff like that, but then you get into the working environment and it's so totally different from college. I mean, I know for me, I set my schedule, so I never had an 8 a.m. college class.
Right.
I think I had it one time, one semester, and it was rough. And so then going into the workforce, it was like, you want me to be here every day at 8 a.m.? And then, of course, in manufacturing, at the cement plant, there was a 7 a.m. meeting. So as I started, going up the corporate ladder and getting more responsibilities, I needed to be at that meeting. I was like, God, now I got to be there at 7. So just kind of as an aside, it just makes me laugh to think of what I was like then and how it would have been so useful to have the program that Kettering has. So shout out.
It was a great program for sure. No question. They're still there and they still have the same requirements.
That's fantastic. So then you get to Horner and you've been there ever since.
Right.
Why?
Sure.
Not to put too fine a tip on it, but like there's got to be some really great reasons to stay in a company so long.
Yeah. So let me kind of explain kind of the transition that I made and kind of the reality that I hit, which was a good reality. Now, when you work for a company, General Motors, at that time, the biggest company in the world, you're a pretty small piece of the puzzle. And then I went to work for a company called Square D, which is still around. They're still a huge company, not as big as General Motors, but they're up there. And then I went to work for Horner Electric, which was what it was at the time. And at that point, we were about a $4 million company. I think we might have had 40 or 50 employees. And I quickly discovered that everything you do matters. I mean, it's pretty much up to you to get the job done, and they're depending on you. And not only is it a big responsibility, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of job satisfaction with really seeing how you can impact the end result at that company. So I just realized something I hadn't known until I started working at a smaller company, and that is I was really suited to that environment. Very much a collaborative environment, very much a let's get the job done. Here's where we want to get to. Let's figure out how to get there quickly. Somebody's got to write the manual. Somebody's got to pick up the phone for tech support. Heck, it might as well be me today, that sort of thing. So it was just an environment that was really conducive to job satisfaction at that early stage. And then, we've grown from there from about a $4 million company, and I haven't checked the exact numbers lately, but, we're in the $60-70 million range now. And over the course of that 30 years, it's been fairly steady fairly steady growth. And again, I've continued to grow as the company has grown.
I I have so many thoughts that go off of just that little bit that you said. I mean, first of all, I think it's fantastic that it sort of still had that sort of startup energy, you know, where it's that entrepreneurial spirit. It's everybody just, we all dive in together, roll up our sleeves, like whatever it takes to get the job done at the end of the day. And there is something so satisfying about actually doing that. I mean, it's one of the reasons I have a vegetable garden at home. Right. I find it so satisfying to do the weeding, to plant the seeds, to get everything together. And then it tastes so much better than something that I could have bought at the grocery store. But the other piece that I loved about what you said is, and this, you know, you and I have just met, so this isn't quite a joke that you and I have yet, but my listeners know I love to talk about the difference between left brain and right brain. You know, it's such an interesting distinction and something that really helps in communicating when you're communicating to someone. And you think, you know, you've been in automation as an electrical engineer, and from the electrical engineers that I've known in my career, very far on the left brain side, you know, very logical, very analytical, very computer-like in a lot of ways. Like that's how their brain functions, which is why they were such a natural inclination to go into electrical engineering. But the left brainers that I know would never give a about for any sort of number, you know, 60, 70 million, something like that. That's a very right-brained answer. You know, right brains tend to be more creative, more free-flowing, more flexible and adaptable. And just in this brief time that we've been talking, this last 10 minutes, you seem to have a lot of right brain tendencies, as do I, right?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you know, the things I was looking at when I was getting out of high school was, okay, do I be an engineer, or maybe I should just go be a weatherman or something totally different, you know, because I had that kind of conflict between my left brain and right brain. But the beauty of what I do today is I get to use both of them. And I've been doing it for 30 years because, you know, the engineering side of me, now I don't design our products necessarily. I mean, I get involved really technically on things, and I'm very technical, don't get me wrong. But that side of things, you know, very, very left brain. But, you know, the creative side of me, the right brain side of me is the one that loves to do presentations and get out in front of customers and just, you know, do the creative part of my job. So that's something you don't always get to experience at a large company. Sometimes you do, right? There's some positions that require, you know, a split between those personalities, if you will. But being that, you know, I'm at a smaller company and we wear a lot of hats, it's something that's never been a problem, is to get satisfaction on both sides of my brain, if you will.
It's good to have balance, that's for sure. Absolutely. I did a lot of presentations myself when I was working in the industry, because it was like, oh, Catryn can talk to people. You go, you know.
That's right. And the purely left brainers, they're hiding in the background. They're totally confident in their abilities and everything, but they have no desire to talk to other people generally. It's not exclusively that way, but a lot of left brainers I know are that's at least their tendency, and they kind of have to work their way out of that tendency.
Absolutely. And then one-on-one, absolutely, they're great. They know their stuff. But the large crowd aspect is can be overwhelming for a lot of people, which is completely okay. Like that's just how the world works. So now that leads me back to the other point of growing a company that you've been with, to have the amazing journey of seeing it go from 4 million to 60 to 70 million, whatever the number may be.
Right.
What sort of things did you see along that path in terms of culture? Because there's a lot that needs to change when you start bringing in new people, and with new people comes new culture changes. So what are some of the things that you've witnessed in your career that really worked in keeping the culture where they wanted? And what were some of the things that maybe didn't work so well in this particular instance?
Sure. So, you know, as you can imagine, over the course of 30 years and with the growth that we've had, and it hasn't all been, you know, like this, you know, there's been, you know, periods of growth and periods of stagnation and periods of growth and that sort of thing. So the things that generally work when we talk culture specifically, you know, our company is currently owned by these days by the Horner sons. Okay. So George and Mary founded the company. Their two boys, Alan and Phil, run the company today, all divisions, and they own the company equally. But they really set the culture, and they set the culture totally based on, what I think what they learned from their parents. And that was, the customer is king. So from the standpoint, the basic culture at Horner is that the customer is king. So that's like the first thing, in general, we're serving the customer. That's kind of all else. That's our top mantra, if you will. But the two brothers themselves run different divisions of the business, and they're totally different people. Okay. And the way they go about it. So Phil, who runs our automation division, he's very entrepreneurial, very outgoing, very risk. He's okay with risk. Okay. He's not reckless. Some would maybe argue to differ, but he's okay with risk for sure.
Calculated risk.
Oh, absolutely. At least,
back of the envelope calculations.
Back of the envelope calculations. Exactly. Whereas his brother, who has been extremely successful as well in doing things his way, is very calculated, very risk averse. So two totally different approaches that have both worked, but they've worked because they've maintained the culture. Okay. And because one is the yin to the other one's yang, right? Yin and yang. So that's also been a big help in terms of what's helped keep the ship steered in the right direction and helped us grow over time. Now, there's been plenty of things that haven't worked over time. As we initially started to grow, as we had that first big growth spurt, we tried to go from kind of a small company, very flat type of organization to more of a hierarchy, right? We set up levels and hierarchy and divisions and departments and all those sorts of things. And it was too big of a change too quick, right? So it was difficult to maintain the culture and maintain all that through that change. So I think over time it took some time to find the right organizational structure that would keep us entrepreneurial and keep us growing, but would be structured enough for us to be effective without being too structured where we would be stagnated and couldn't get anything done. So that's been a big challenge, is finding the right structure.
And I think that's something that, every company struggles with. And there's a lot of listeners that are just starting their journey, just building their business. A lot of them are on that precipice of, going from the solopreneur to growing their business. And it is something to keep in mind as to what is the culture, because you have to start looking for that as you're hiring and making sure that you keep that top of mind while you've got all the other hats of, the marketing and the sales and the delivery, and all those aspects of it.
So for us, the challenge, the biggest challenge I saw, at least initially, was going from like a key group of 6 or 8 employees to that next level of like 50. So that step from like, let's say 10 to 50 was a real challenging one.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you'll hear people go like, oh, back in the old days, when it was this way. And there's a piece of nostalgia that comes with that. And we always tend to remember things better than maybe they actually were. So it's interesting how companies navigate that. And it's something that I personally am always curious about. But the other thing that you mentioned is it's a family run business.
Sure.
It was from the parents passing down to their children. And that is not always a successful handoff.
Right.
Sometimes the parents, see the children making choices that they wouldn't make, and that can bring up issues. How has that been for Horner, and what ways are they mitigating any sort of potential issues?
One thing that Horners have done an extremely good job of over the years is keeping family stuff in the background. Okay. So I'm sure there have been plenty of disagreements between the brothers or the brothers and the parents, or what, I'm sure a lot of that has happened. And I've heard, through the background that it definitely has happened. But the front that they present to the employees is pretty unified. Okay. It's very unified. And so while I can say as a 33-year employee at this company is that, family issues have never, ever, ever been in the workplace where I was exposed to them. Okay. Now I'm sure there were people who, happened to be in the right room at the right time and may have witnessed a few things, but in general, what they did extremely well and continue to do that today is any discussions, disagreements they have or whatever, the family business is taken care of in the background, and they definitely project unity to their employees, which is very important. You don't want employees seeing a bunch of bickering or any kind of disagreements or those sorts of things. Of course, they're going to happen because you're mixing business with family, and those things are going to happen. But if you can keep those in the background and away from your employees, and especially away from your customers, then that's the way you need to do it if you can.
And it's a good point, because no matter what sort of relationship, if there's any type of business partners, that's going to be an issue. There's going to be things people disagree on. And a lot of times we like to think of the family in a very positive way, but not everyone comes from a good family, right?
Sure.
So that's great to hear how they've done that.
And one thing, let me add on that, is that over 30 years, of course, the ups and the downs in general, right? Not just for our business, but for any business. Recessions have come and been wreaked havoc. And of course, we had the COVID thing. We've had 9/11. All those were monumental events that had huge impacts on business at the time they occurred. And the way that the ownership reacted during a crisis is something I'll never forget. I mean, they were always, very upfront with employees. They definitely had the employees' best interest in mind, even when it included, layoffs, which happened a couple times in my career, not often, but a couple times. It was to keep the business healthy so that, a bulk of the employees could benefit from the business staying healthy and moving forward. So the response of the owners during crises is really where you can learn a lot about any business owner, whether they're a group of family members or not.
And that takes us back. COVID is still in recent history. It's still something that we all remember quite well. How did that work for Horner? And I know that Horner has businesses all over internationally, right? There's
Sure, absolutely.
Canada, I saw some in Europe, India. So different states had different reactions to it. Different countries had different reactions to it. What was that like for you in the experience you had with Horner?
Sure. So in general, I would say, the owners were very, very concerned about their employees. Everything they communicated was about, making sure their employees were safe while the business continued to move forward as much as we could. Right. So that was the communication was very clear. Hey, you guys are the most important to us. We're going to ensure your safety as we keep the business moving forward as we can. Now, the other things that changed was, we did have some employees start to work remote that weren't working remote before, of course, including myself. And the other thing that changed during COVID is at big companies, a lot of big companies, of course, that especially the ones that have shareholders, they're very cognizant of managing the business for maybe the current quarter, right? The current quarter or the next quarter. They're very, they're not looking out too far ahead because they got to make sure they hit their milestones for, the current quarter, et cetera. With a family-owned business, there wasn't, basically it was all about doing what they thought was best for the business, without necessarily having to satisfy anybody but themselves, right? In terms of risk and strategy. So we didn't cancel our purchase orders. We continued taking in components. We continued to build products. And the end result was that the big companies, a lot of which were our competitors, had canceled purchase orders and stopped taking their they kind of interrupted their supply chain to kind of control cash and those sorts of things. So when things picked back up again, after COVID kind of started to let up, they picked back up again really fast. And a lot of companies were not ready to respond to that because they'd kind of shut off their supply chain. We didn't do that at Horner. We kept our supply chain going as best we could. And we've been able to, from a business standpoint, we've done very well post-COVID because we can deliver product without interruption for the most part, especially compared with our competitors. So we've actually picked up a fair amount of market share just because of that fact. So that is an advantage to a privately held business. You can sometimes follow strategies that a publicly held business is hesitant to do just based on, metrics and things like that.
And is that mostly because Horner's manufacturing is in the U.S.?
That has a big part of it, right? I mean, we manufacture all over the world. It's not strictly the US, but we do as much in the US as we can. So if we can keep our supply chain going for product coming in, and if we can manufacture a fair amount of it on our own equipment in our own plants, which we have control over, we're not depending on a third party to manufacture stuff for us, then that really helps us out a lot. So yeah, so that's another big part of it, supply chain, and then making as much as possible in our plants with our equipment.
Yeah, I don't think people thought nearly as much about supply chain until COVID and not being able to get stuff. It was like, but before Amazon would just deliver it. Like, where is my stuff?
That's right. So the global supply chain that happened, in the years between World War II and COVID, really, you can think of it that way, had its first, well, maybe not its first, but one of the biggest interruptions it's ever had was COVID. And so it really put it to the test. And, thankfully for our company, based on our leadership strategies, we came through it really well.
And one of the threads that I've heard throughout our conversation is around communication and how things are communicated. So do you feel like there's something specific or special that Horner's leadership does to communicate it in a way that's more powerful and received than others? Because it's communication is such a big topic, and it's something that people get wrong a lot.
Sure. Well, let me see how the best way to answer that. So I think part of the reason why I think communication is done pretty well at Horner today is because I think our leadership has learned the wrong way of doing things and the right way of doing things, and now they prefer to do them the right way. So, part of learning, like you said in your opening, I think, was learning from your mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And communication is something that we've struggled with over the years. Internal communication is something we've struggled with over the years. But I think because we do have a fairly, our owner, for instance, has been running our business now since, for our part of the business for the 30 plus years I've been there. And he's learned a lot from his mistakes. And I think he's learned that if he's just open with people and really frank and, that people can see that what he's communicating is heartfelt, if you will, that it's not corporate speak. It's not a spin. It's basically, it might be a little raw sometimes. I'm not saying raw from negative, but I'm saying raw from, it might not, there might be a few
not polished. Yeah.
There might be a few dangling participles in there somewhere, but the communications that's done is done, very openly, and we can tell that it's from the heart for sure.
People can feel that authenticity. They absolutely can. I mean, nobody wants to feel like they're being talked at. We want to be talked to. We want to be part of the conversation and included in there. And so it's such a like, oh, I have to be professional and, buttoned up and like going to be very, precise and polished in my communication, but that doesn't always land. Yeah.
Earlier in my career, I used to do a lot of editing for, my boss would say, okay, which is our owner, Phil Horner. He would say, okay, I've got this communication I want to send out there. Hey, can you take a look at it and clean it up for me? And it took me a few years, frankly, to clean it up the right amount, because if you clean it up too much, they can't tell that Phil's the guy that wrote it. Right. And ultimately they need to know it came from Phil. So, I found myself doing less and less editing over time, just because, I wanted to make sure that his personality and what he was trying to say and the way he was trying to say it went through. And I'm at this stage in my career, there's other people that, that help him with his communications, and I'm sure they're dealing with the same stuff.
And that, the thing that everyone's been talking about in 2023 is large language model like ChatGPT and the advent of AI. And it's so great to have your analogy of that, you could take all of the stuff that Phil is saying and put it through ChatGPT, and it's not going to come out sounding like him. It's not going to land and resonate the same way that the authentic voice does.
Sure.
So I think that was a great tie into that. And of course, that leads me into my next question is, how is the advent of AI and large language models, like how is that impacting your business, and is it helping it or deterring it?
Well, we don't really know at this stage exactly what the impact will be precisely. But we know it will have a large impact, and it's an area we're studying really closely. in general, I think in one way, we have a very programmable product. You can almost think of our product like a computer in some ways that needs to be programmed. And so ChatGPT can be used and has shown to be usable as an example to create little snippets of code that you might want to use, to do a specific task, for instance. So I think it's going to have some impact on the way our customers program our products, for instance. That's one impact I can see. And then the other is somewhat related, and that is in a slightly kind of an offshoot of AI, which is machine learning. And machine learning probably has the biggest potential of having a huge impact on what we do or what our customers do more specifically. When we sell a product, it's a very general purpose. Our customers will take that. And one customer, for instance, might take our product and use it to control, I don't know, let's say a pizza oven. Okay, or some other process that's doing heating and those sorts of things. And some of those processes are really tricky. You were in the process control industry. You worked at a cement plant, right? So some of those processes can be really tricky. And if you can utilize machine learning, where you can utilize that technology to help you really improve the control of that process over time, now you can have a huge impact on the quality of what you're producing, the profitability, obviously, if you have less waste and higher quality and lower scrap and those sorts of things. So I think machine learning has the potential of having a huge impact on our company. And then on the AI side, which it's related, it's really more about how our customers will program our product more than anything else.
That makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you for spending your time with us and helping to explain, the technical bit about the automation, but then also all the things that you've learned in your career, because it's really an incredible feat and something that is really inspiring. Can you let the people know a little bit about how they can reach out to you, how they can work with Horner, and what would be a good connection for you so that we can all connect to each other?
Sure. So our website is www.hornerautomation.com. That's our primary website. So you can learn all about Horner's automation products there. We have a solution website, which is hornersolution, nonplural.com, and we also have hornerlighting.com. So those are our three primary websites. And then for me personally, I have a weekly YouTube technical live stream that I do every week. Sometimes it's specifically, teaching our customers and prospects how to use our products. And sometimes it's about general industry topics that they may want to learn. So that's every Tuesday on the Horner APG YouTube channel. So, and at this stage, we've got a couple hundred videos up there that we've done really since COVID started, really. So that's probably the best way to reach out and check out Horner.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Take care. Thanks for having me.
And to the listeners, thank you so much for being here. I hope you found this interesting. Please like and subscribe and share it with your network so we can continue to bring you amazing guests like this one. And if there's some sort of process or industry or type of profession that you're curious about, please reach out. I'd love to go find the perfect guest to interview for you. Until next time, everyone.